coming from in the chat. And I'll take this as a moment to introduce myself for those of you who do not know. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Cheryl Kopong. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently in Atlanta, Georgia, but based kind of all over the place, very much a nomad. I serve as a senior project manager at the Chisholm Legacy Project. And I am so happy, so grateful, so excited to be here in community in the room with you all today. We have a really exciting, amazing discussion planned with some incredible Black femmes within the energy justice space. And we're really excited to just dive into everything. If at any point I start talking too fast, tell me to slow down because I get excited. And then I just start going. But yes, everyone, I will just give us a really quick welcome. Welcome into Burdens and Blessings, the intersectional statistics and stories of Black women and energy justice. This discussion is going to be kind of grounded in this paper that was written by Jackie Patterson, where we're going to be really exploring and discussing about what we all know to be true in terms of how Black women are at the intersect, right, of all of the burdens, of all of the different um, the negative impacts of the climate justice crisis as it pertains to energy justice. But as we tend to do, right, we overcome. And we're also at the helm of a lot of the solutions. And so we have an incredible event planned today where we're talking to Black femme solutionaries about energy justice, about a lot of the disparities and the issues and the problems that they're seeing in their communities, in their organizations, within their people, but also, again, about the solutions that they're also able to explore and that we've been at the leadership of. So really, really excited for that. Thank you, Josie. Shout out Josie in the chat, giving us the link to the paper where you can access the report and really make sure to look through that. I know Jackie spent a lot of time. There's been a lot of hands, a lot of love, a lot of toil that has gone into this. And so, yeah, we're just really excited about this conversation today. With that said, I want to keep us on time to respect all of you guys' time who are here with us today. So I will slide it over, pass it over to Jackie to give us a little bit more of a grounding and introduction.
Thank you so much. Once again, appreciate you. And yeah, thanks again for everyone for being here. I'm just going to quickly run through an overview of the paper so that we can quickly get back to our solutionaries who will give us the light and the guidance from their amazing work. So I'm going to share my slides. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Here we go. And it's working on just before. Okay, good. From the beginning. Great. So as I said, I'm going to go through just quickly so you can just get this overall overview, but the gift is really going to be in hearing from our panelists. So I'll talk a little bit about the vision, naming the moment that we're in, some of the pre-existing vulnerabilities that for Black women, the impacts of the fossil fuel economy, talk about energy and affordability, how climate change impacts are also, of course, impacted by the fossil fuel economy, and then those come back and disproportionately impact us. And then talk about some of the governance issues around exclusion from the energy sector, intersectional identities, how we talk about race and gender being both the ways of historical inequities, but also being the blessing of leadership. But also there are other identities that have that same dynamic. Touch a little bit on policy solutions and then hand it over to talk about BIPOC women's, or Black women in this case, leadership. So just again, grounding us in vision, as Rosa Parks said, there was a paraphrase on the biblical reference: without a vision, the people perish, but without courage, dreams die. And so solutionaries are really modeling for us what courage looks like and how dreams truly flourish with their vision. So we know that we hold this vision of a beloved community where we are living in harmony with each other, living in harmony with the earth, and where we have a situation that's shifting from an extractive economy into a regenerative economy that's really embracing ecological and social well-being, cooperation, caring and sacredness, regeneration, and deep democracy. So that's the vision that we want. So we'll be talking a little bit today about stopping the bad and building the new. So just starting with some of these historical inequities and how they've yielded the pre-existing vulnerabilities, particularly for Black women. We know that Black women in the United States bear a disproportionate burden from the fossil fuel economy because of environmental, health, economic, and other challenges. And so, as we think about some of the specifics, the wage and wealth gap, Black women earn just 64 cents for every dollar that a white man earns, and we hold 90% less wealth. And so, again, start to see how this impacts everything from utility, being able to pay for utilities, recovering from the disasters that have become the norm, or having safe and secure, healthy housing. We know that the income directly ties to disproportionately limited access to healthcare, reliable transportation, and other basics that we need to be able to survive and thrive. On top of it all, the healthcare access for Black women are nearly 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. And we also know that over 60% of those deaths are preventable. So it's both access to healthcare, but then also quality of healthcare that challenges us, with 22% of us being uninsured compared to 12.7% of white women. We also know that transit equity has this impact both in terms of the lack of access to transit, but then later on we'll talk about also the 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 proximity to near roadway air pollution, to the pollution from oil trains, the pollution from the shipping channels, and so forth and so on. So only 24% of Black households lack access to a private vehicle, compared to just 7% of white households. Only 12.4% of Black women using public transit in Atlanta can reach radiation centers, which again, because of the disproportionate the disproportionate harms in terms of cancers and other challenges, then we need to be able to reach the healthcare centers, and transit has a direct impact on this. Single motherhood, nearly 80% of single parent households are led by women, particularly Black women. And again, also tied to poverty. The housing burden, 30% of Black homeowners face severe housing costs, and Black women renters with children make up 28.3% of annual eviction filings nationally. Again, 1 in 5 renters behind on rent likely to face eviction are Black women. And just again, you can see all this as you read the report. So I'm going to go kind of fast through this. Black women make up 7.8% of the U.S. population, but hold less than 5% of the elected positions in Congress, and hold just 1.9% of the statewide executive roles. And never has a Black woman been elected to governor for any of these 50 United States. And so at least the political power then kind of leads to why it is that all of these other systems are the way that they are. So we talk about the impact of the fossil fuel economy, everything from the proximity to pollution, as we talked about, the health toll of pollution, with Black Americans being exposed to 1.5 higher levels of, 1.5 times higher level of particle pollution than white Americans, the endocrine disrupting chemicals that are particularly harmful to the reproductive systems. We talked a little bit before about pregnancy related challenges, and this has been tied by various folks to pollution exposure. The heat and preterm births, as we start to talk about climate impacts, that climate change worsens the Black and infant mortality rates. Again, the statistics are there in the paper. Black women are 84% more likely to have asthma than Black men. So even within our race, we're more impacted as women. Black children are 8 times more likely to die of asthma than white children. And so our Rachel is going to be joining us later, image of her. So when we talk about this combination of fossil fuels, extraction, and violence against women, we also know that pipeline projects are that when you look at whether it's the man camps that are host to the infrastructure for the fossil fuel industry or the pipelines themselves, that we see the indigenous women and other folks who live along those pipelines are more likely to experience violence along those pipelines and man camps and so forth. And then even when we talk about quantum solutions, even the false solutions are disproportionately harmful. Sharon Levine here. So the example of Louisiana's Cancer Alley, which is a heavily polluted corridor where predominantly Black communities live. And again, oil and gas companies building carbon capture and sequestration facilities in those areas. Again, claiming to fight climate change by trapping emissions underground, but this is a largely unproven technology. Meanwhile, corporations continue to profit while we are being harmed. And so as we think about energy access and affordability, this is yet another place of disproportionate impact, with energy insecurity being more likely to be borne by Black women-led households. Women are especially affected by energy insecurity, with making up 56% of LIHEAP, low-income heating and energy assistance program recipients, and 23% of women-led households live in poverty. We also know that there's the disproportionate energy burden by race. Black households are 43% more likely to they spend sorry, a significant proportion of their income, of our income, on energy bill compared to non-Hispanic white households. So 43% more for Black households, for 20% more for Latino households, 45% more for indigenous households, and low income households spend 3 times more than higher income households compared to their income. And so the high rates of energy insecurity are tied to poor mental health, tied to respiratory challenges, thermal stress, disrupted sleep quality, adverse child health outcomes. And for children living in energy insecure households, there's a direct tie to increased food insecurity, higher rates of hospitalization, worse overall health, and developmental challenges. And African Americans have a higher rate of disconnections. We did a report when I was at the NAACP several years ago called Lights Out in the Cold, Reforming Utility Shutoff Policies as if Human Rights Matter. And in that report, you'll see example after example of these, of the people paying the price of poverty with their very lives. And so as we talk about climate change impacts, whether it's climate forced migration, with many of the countries with the highest rate of displacement being countries that are predominantly Black. And then we have the gendered impact there as well, because women fleeing climate disasters face elevated risks of trafficking, sexual violence, exploitation, and so forth. And then we have this whole crimmigration situation, which has only gotten worse lately. And I'll talk a little bit more about this moment that we're in. So much of this was even before this moment that we're in, where all these things that I'm talking about have been intensified with the removal of the social safety net. So yeah, I have about 5 minutes left, so I will be quick here. So when we talk about disasters, women are disproportionately impacted by disasters. Black folks are disproportionately impacted by disasters. So that's double jeopardy for Black women, whether it's the BP oil drilling disaster, Hurricane Katrina, the earthquake in Haiti, all these different places and all these different people. Whether it's in the United States or overseas, women are disproportionately harmed by disasters when it comes to violence against women and so forth. Shifts in agricultural yields. Already our households are more likely to be food insecure, with a history of redlining and so forth. And this, of course, is just exacerbated as climate change exacerbates food injustice overall. We are more likely to live in areas that are prone to flooding, more likely to live in areas that we're more likely to have homes that are in the floodplains and not have flood insurance. So all of these mean that we're more impacted as Black folks and more impacted as women due to sea level rise and the increase in flooding. So and then as we talk about intersectional identities, whether it is differently able persons and the dependence on energy for medical devices and so forth, make the difference between having electricity or not, and even more so an issue of life and death for people who are differently abled. People who are and yes, and so and also the strain from the challenges around the unsafe temperatures and so forth, with tied to various chronic illnesses, and all make it compounded jeopardy there. And when we talk about LGBTQI communities, which I'll talk about a little bit more again as we talk about these moments that we're in now, but again, with the overlapping structural harms because of pre-existing discrimination in housing, employment, healthcare, it then increases vulnerability to environmental exposures. And then when we also point out that a lot of the work we do as Chisholm Legacy Project is on rural health. And so we know that rural households carry a median energy burden 1/3 higher than the US average. For low income rural households, the burden is nearly 3 times higher. So, and particularly when you add other identity, elderly folks and so forth, it makes the risks even higher. So then on top of it all, we talked a little bit about some of the overarching representation issues. When we also look at the energy sector in particular, there is a lack of representation and leadership in the energy sector. Women just hold 27% of the jobs in the energy sector as a whole. So even though we're 50+% of the population, meanwhile, the energy sector spent $445 million in the last election cycle to influence political decisions. So us not being represented in the sector, and then that sector having such an outsized impact on who's elected in the office. Again, we see all of these cascading and compounding impacts of our lack of representation. We're underrepresented in the zoning board. So when these facilities get disproportionately placed in our communities, we start to see why and how. We are grossly underrepresented in the public utilities commissions or the public services commissions, which hold sway over electricity, water, gas, telecommunications. And again, 65% of public utilities commissioners are men. 6 states have all male public utilities commissions: the Idaho, Louisiana, Maine, Mississippi, New Hampshire, and Utah. Only one Black woman has ever served on the Public Utilities Commission in Louisiana's 80-year history. One Black woman. And I can go on and on about this because it's a particular pet peeve of mine, but I'm going to keep going here because I have several slides on it, but I won't take you through them. And then when we talk about the policies that we need, you saw all the problems, so you can imagine what the policies are that we need: inclusive representational governance, including around zoning boards, improved public health policies, improved economic equity and inclusion policies, a just energy landscape, a better, the reinstatement of low-income heating and energy assistance program. Certainly immigration reform. I wouldn't even say reform, seems too mild. We need a complete overhaul and dismantling of the existing problematic system. And so just wrapping up with these moments as I pass the microphone back, we know that the social safety net rollbacks that are happening right now, cuts to food assistance, Medicare and Medicaid cuts, Affordable Care Act rollbacks, dismantling of civil rights enforcement. So all the things we were talking about were even pre where we are now, and all of this is making all of this so much worse, as you all know. Racial justice rollbacks with DEI initiatives being canceled and outlawed, federal contracting and hiring, in affirmative action being impacted, minority business development, disadvantaged business enterprises, fair housing being rolled back, environmental justice being rolled back, immigration rights being, but you just know what we see every single day, every single moment, what's happening with immigration rights. When we talk about gender justice rollback, including the elimination of DEI, also weakens the efforts to address the systemic bias, the cuts to Title X funding around reproductive health, the weakened workplace discrimination enforcement, oh my goodness, and the LGBTQ, the enacted executive orders and policies that redefine sex as an immutable biological classification of male or female, which has led to rescinding of prior protections for LGBTQIA plus. And again, banning and transgender individuals from serving in the military, restricting access to gender affirming care, et cetera, et cetera. And then we know the energy justice rollbacks, which we'll talk more about, including the GGRF, Solar for All, which I know Denise will talk about, and Nia and so forth. Elimination of LAHEAP, as we said, and of course the pollution regulation rollbacks with the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, cutting EPA to almost non-existence, weaponizing EPA, loosening coal ash disposal rules. And then the climate rollbacks with the, the rollback of FEMA, the extreme rollback of FEMA, elimination of climate core, BRIC, and the withdrawal from our global commitments, including the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and Paris Agreement. So I think we all know the impacts on Black women, and we'll talk more about this, but I will hand it back over to Cheryl to take us to the next part, and I will go off and I'll stop sharing somehow if I can figure out how. Sorry, let's see. Maybe if I escape. Okay, some weird things are happening. Hold on. Let's see if I can find it. I do this maybe. Oh yes, okay, lovely. All right, sorry about that, Cheryl. All right, am I gone?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank God.
Thank you so much for that, Jackie. Thank you so much for that grounding. Thank you so much for the work that you continue to do to highlight these things that we know are happening in our communities. I think I share the sentiments of everybody in the room when we sit here, and it's just, I mean, even as those of us who are a part of the community, sometimes when you see the sheer numbers and the actual and putting faces and specific narratives, right, to these statistics, it makes it even that much more real to us to be able to see those things. So we really appreciate you for giving us that grounding. And I'm really excited to kind of dive deeper into a lot of the things that you brought up with our esteemed panelists. Speaking of panelists, is getting to about that time where we will bring our panelists all onto the screen. And I want to give them all a chance to introduce themselves briefly, tell us their names, pronouns, where they're calling in from, and what their organizations and positions are, so that we can kind of get a grounding and see like who are we going to be having this conversation with. So I will go ahead and kick it off to Denise first to give us a brief introduction, and we can just go around from there.
Thank you, Cheryl, and I'm so happy to be here. My name is Denise Abdul Rahman. My pronouns are she and her, and I am coming here by way of the land of Madam Walker, uh, also known as Indianapolis or Indiana, and I am representing my newly founded organization. It's about 2.5 years old, called Black Sunlight Sustainability.
Thank you. So great to have you here. I'm really excited. Nia?
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation again. Really grateful to be here. My name is Nia Jones. I am representing my also newly found company called the Energy Queen, where we strive to educate community members on the intersections of renewable energy and sustainable development. I'm calling in from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and I see a few folks in the chat also in D.C. So great to be in community with you all and looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much to our Energy Justice Queen. A lot going on in DC, so interested to hear about that. Monica?
Hi everyone, Monica, she, her. I'm the Energy Democracy Education Organizer with Solidarity, and I am calling in from Michigan on Anishinaabe land.
Thank you, Monica. So great to have you. And last but certainly not least, Rashida.
It's Rashetta. Hi,
Oh,
everybody.
Rashida.
Thank you
Sorry.
so much for having me today. Thank you all for being here. My name is Rashetta Ozan. I'm calling in from Lake Charles, Louisiana currently. I am the founder, director, and CEO of the Vessel Project of Louisiana, and also the co-founder and co-director of the Gulf South Fossil Finance Hub. And my pronouns are she and her. Excited to be here.
Thank you, Roy Shetta. Did I say that right? Make sure I'm saying it right. Roy Shetta, period. Got it. It's in there. Thank you so much. We have an incredible panel of Black femmes here before us. As you all see, these are our solutionaries who are at the helm of both the issue and the solution. Very, very excited. So we're just going to go ahead and get into some questions that we have prepared. I want to encourage all of our participants to also include their questions in the chat as we go along. Any burning questions that you have. I know I always forget questions if I don't write them down immediately, and then we'll go ahead and gather those and share them with everyone at the end. So we're going to start off kind of broad. And so essentially, how does being a Black woman, being Black and being a woman, shape the way that you show up and approach energy justice work? And what unique strengths, strategies, and perspectives do you think come from being a Black woman and Black femmes in the space? Don't all jump at once.
I'll start. I don't think we have any particular order.
No.
But again, thank you all for being here. I notice it's over 60 people who are here on a Tuesday afternoon to listen to Black women talk about our everyday lives. So I just want to start off by us taking a collective woosah, because even with the 65 participants, the majority of us are women, right? Women, we show up and we show up for each other despite what we're going through, despite our own challenges, because we feel like it is our inherent responsibility to save not only each other, but the world, right? And we put everything that we're dealing with to the side. So being Black and being a woman, it just profoundly shapes how I engage with everything, but especially energy justice work, especially because of all of the statistics that Jackie gave in the report, but also knowing that we are most likely to endure the most harms from these fights, from these battles, from the crises that we're fighting, right? So we're literally, we barely can breathe because of the asthma, because of the cancer, because of all the health issues, but yet we're facing the chemical companies head on. Like, we're going straight into those companies with the illnesses that we're talking about. We're facing the the light bill company, the water companies, while we can't even pay our own water bills. We're assisting people with finding assistance with their rents or with food, and then we go home and we're struggling for what we're gonna eat. So it helps us to not only be present in helping, but also to understand what we're fighting for, because we're living it, right? It informs our perspective, which drives me to advocate not just for equitable access, but also for the recognition of the systemic injustices that disproportionately impact our community. I always say within my organization that none of us are good until we're all good. But also, if we lift up the lowest community, the community at the bottom, we all will rise, right? Everybody will rise. So it makes me look at the people who really don't have anything. When I think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I think about the fact that most of the people who are fighting this fight are themselves still on that bottom tier, still looking for security, for food safety, for clean air, for clean water, but yet still fighting. That is, it gives me a different perspective of what I'm fighting for. And that resilience and creativity, I believe, is very special and unique to being a Black woman.
Mic drop. Like I got a whole chill. Like I don't even, I mean, I want to open it up to the other panelists to also share about their experiences, but you hit every nail on the head, because of where we stand in society and because of the unique positioning that we have. Once we as Black women are uplifted, are helped, are given that pedestal, are given that seat, it inevitably helps everyone else just because of the role that we play within society. And I think that, I mean, you spoke so eloquently and so beautifully about that. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to add about their experience being a Black femme in this space? Real. Okay.
Go ahead, Monica.
Okay, yeah. I just resonate with so much of what you just said, Brochetta. Black women, I mean, we're really, truly, honestly, just we're on the front lines, right? We're experiencing it all directly. For me personally, I remember growing up as a poor Black kid and like witnessing my family experience heavy energy burden and just like struggling to pay utility bills. And those experiences have truly shaped me and how I show up and do this work and just how I try to always like put myself in other people's shoes as well, and kind of really try to like extend grace and empathy, but also especially for Black women, just like just understanding how difficult it is constantly experiencing, misogynoir, and constantly having to advocate for ourselves and perhaps being the only Black woman in the room. And I think there's just something so special about being able to show up and say, I'm experiencing these issues, whether it be, like energy burden, high utility bills, prolonged blackouts, whatever it might be, and really making the connections and seeing like something is amiss, something is afoot, something is off. And then taking that and being able to say, I'm going to talk to my neighbor, I'm going to talk to my family, I'm going to talk to my friend, and really build a community and do something about it. And I just want to say and like kind of shout out Solidarity's executive director, Shamika Nichols, because that's exactly who is a Black woman. That's exactly what she did and kind of really building out the work that we do at Solidarity. And that's, democracy, energy democracy in action, of her kind of saying like, as a Highland Park resident, and like noticing like, okay, Highland Park is this kind of small city within the heart of Detroit that is experiencing heavy energy burden, that had the streetlights repossessed by the utility companies here, and being like, you know what, enough is enough. We're gonna like step up. We're gonna do something about this community, and get us out the dark. And she really worked with the founding executive director to build out Solidarity to what it is today. And so I just have so much appreciation for her and the work that she does, and just like all Black women. So yeah, and I'll pass it to you, Denise.
And Denise, I want to ask another quick question in addition to whatever it is that you'll say, because Monica hit the next question. So I'm like, in the interest of time, let me sneak in another thing real quick. Um, you talked about growing up as a poor Black woman, Monica, a poor Black kid within, and seeing how that also affects, like how your relationship with utility bills and just like what you saw in your community. Denise, I know a lot of the work that you do specifically in Enforce Solar for All, and a lot of the work that you do with communities is also for those lower income communities, or the ones who maybe don't have access to as much capital as some of the other ones in different area codes, different zip codes. So I want to ask, outside of race and gender, how have you witnessed other intersections coming up in your work? And like, what's the relationship? What are the different things that you've seen and noticed specifically? In
Okay,
addition to
well,
not even just outside, but
okay. Well, to kind of the first question, I'll say that I think I have always told the story that I show up from a human and civil rights perspective, and I think, the drive as women, a lot of times, I feel like as caregivers to a lot of people in our family, that this is like a deeper extension of the love that we have for our people, and the condition, wanting to shape and change the condition of our very lives. And when I think about like, yeah, why did I gravitate to like energy justice? It goes back to me being in the bed with my mother when the lights were out and the power was out and we were cold. And so I think that's what continues to drive me in this body of work, along with so many other things, because I think it's not just an environmental issue, it's not just a climate issue, it's an economic issue. And so it's all the holisticness of it that sort of, I think, gravitates a lot of us to doing this work, and bringing our healing and our creativity and our storytelling and our cultural awareness. When I think about the race and gender and how have I witnessed intersections coming up, I think about everything from, I recently said that I'm doing this Solar for All because it's important for a brighter future. So for young people and what it means to make sure that there's a place for them, that there's a better world than even what I have been brought up in, a more just and a more righteous world. There's the intersection of the global framework and making sure that we do the right things by way of underdeveloped nations across the world, and other what I call akin communities that are like our communities in the United States that are bearing the brunt of injustice. And so those are some of the things that come up, and some of the things that connect around that is if we don't do the right thing around the need to repurpose panels and be involved in the production process, or the impacts of the AI data centers, all of those impact the youth and the next generation and so forth. So, yeah.
That's huge. Yeah, I want to kind of get into you and your expertise. You're in the nation's capital. You do a lot of work, kind of on the technical sides of things. I want to talk specifically about just transition. And when we talk about a just transition, we're talking about blocking the bad and building the good, right? So as a solutionary, as someone who's working closely with this communities and closely in this work, how do you see these two imperatives show up in your work?
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to shout out all the remarks by the panelists. Y'all are speaking my language. I love this space. So when I was reflecting on what blocking the bad and building the good meant in my work, it all comes down to the workforce development challenge within the industry, both from the renewable side, but also from the blue collar side. So with the blocking the bad, I kind of equated that to the stigma behind blue collar workers and the fact that also as a woman, we don't come to mind when you think of a hammer and a nail, right? And so just kind of thinking about that blocking the bad aspect of women can do these type of activities. I'll share a quick personal story. When I visited India for a program in my undergraduate studies, I got to know these women called the Solar Mamas, who were women that came from all over the world to this teeny tiny college in India, and they learned how to become solar engineers. They were completely illiterate from their native language. Their primary role was to take care of the household, and they had to get permission from village chiefs and the village to take this journey. And I mean, they were represented from Tanzania to Afghanistan to areas in South America. And it was an amazing experience to see that. And I knew after that moment, anyone could do this work. So when I think about building the good, I'm really focused on that workforce development aspect, but towards education. And I did want to mention one more kind of intersection, which is the achievement gap. Because I'm a STEM girly, and in this work, you don't find often a lot of people that have like that strong technical background, as you mentioned, Cheryl. I'm an engineer. I got my master's degree in energy, but I was often and always the only Black woman in this space. And so we think about the achievement gap and how Black and brown students perform lowerly in STEM fields, and then think about that aspect of women in general. So here's that intersection again of like Black girls achieving less in those science and mathematics courses. And so that cannot lead to positive outcomes within our industry of energy. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Nia. Does anybody else want to chime in on how just transition and blocking the bad and building the good shows up in their work?
Yes, of course. So, just going back to the previous question and thinking about beyond race and gender, what other things have emerged? So, like I was saying previously, I work from a place of the things that I've experienced, the things that directly impact the people around me, the things around me, but then have a bigger impact on the world and not just my community. So I think about my life, and I've told this story before, as being, a young mom who was married at 19 years old, but was married to a very abusive spouse. And so trying to navigate that, trying to get out of that, and finding myself, not being able to pay my light bill, not being able to take care of my children, not being able to feed them. So it kept me in the marriage. And I ended up staying married for 17 years. Well, I graduated as valedictorian of my class. So I knew that I had the education and the knowledge to move forward. I even came to Louisiana on a full scholarship, a full academic and band scholarship, but I was married, right? And so I was in that Southern Christian mode of you're married, you have to stay married, but then I was also being abused. And so I'm battling all of those things while also trying to figure out how am I going to achieve my goals? How am I going to achieve the things that I want to achieve for me, while also hearing the voice of this is your season to be a mother. This is your season to raise your children. So ultimately I had 6 children, ended up divorcing my husband, and the first thing I'm labeled as a single Black mama with 6 children. Do all of these children have the same daddies? Why are you over here for assistance? You know, being asked all of those questions and feeling like I had to say, well, I was married for 17 years, and having to explain myself to get assistance, and having to break down my whole entire life, and feeling ashamed and as if I didn't have any dignity because I felt like I was begging for assistance in a system that was supposed to be set up to assist me in a time of need, to help me move on to that next level that I was trying to move to, because I was working 2 jobs. I was working for the school as an assistant teacher. So saying all that to say, sometimes, even as Black women, when we're doing all that we can, the lack of resources, the lack of help, but also those old sayings, those old beliefs that you have to do this as a woman, you have to be in this position, you can't do this. All of those things intersect, and then they get us to where we are. Because to Nia's point of Black women not, having those technical backgrounds, those math backgrounds, we weren't brought up to do that. We were always told, go take home economics, go do something that can help you be, work, be a homemaker, be a wife, be a mother. So those are the fields that we went after. Being a teacher, being a nurse, those are the fields we went after. We never saw as little girls that we could grow up and be an engineer, that we could grow up and run for office, because we didn't have those things. So in doing this work, I've seen those intersections emerge, such as socioeconomic status and geography. Where did we grow up? Because if you grew up in the South, again, you have all of those Southern traditions of you have to get married. It has to be a man and a woman marriage. You have to stay in that marriage. You have to have these Christian values. And then, if you grew up in the South also, the yes ma'am and no ma'am. And then as soon as you leave the South, all of those ideals are out the window. So now you have to adapt to those surroundings. So I just wanted to go back to that. But thinking about, a just transition, how do we not only transition from those things that are the norm, those things that society has said we have to be inside this box with 4 corners, these things that, society has said we only deserve a slice of the pie and not the whole pie. This thing that society has said, this is what we're giving you, and this is all that you can have. You can't have it all. How do we transition from those? Because until we transition to a new belief system that, we deserve so much more, we're not going to fight for the entirety, right? We're just going to be playing whack-a-mole, and that's going to be with whatever injustice we're fighting. Because if we only align to fight a particular thing, if we're only aligning to fight police brutality, for example, and we're not on the same page when it comes to energy justice, we're not going to win, because we don't feel like we can have both. We don't feel like, oh, we can only have one of these things. We can only, have non-racist police, but we can't have clean air. We can only have LGBTQ rights, but we can't have women's rights. We have to work at the intersection and understand that it's going to take us all fighting together to get this transition. And in order to get to the transition, transition means just what it says. We have to start now. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and all of these issues are solved. We have to start today. And what the way that we start, because I think about blocking the bad and building the good as two sides of the same coin. We have to focus on advocating against harmful practices, period. Not just one thing, but all harmful practices. And while we simultaneously promote good practices, showing and modeling how these things can work, showing and modeling how mutual aid works. If our neighbor is hungry, we feed our neighbor. If our neighbor can't pay their light bill, we help them to pay their light bill. We help to, grow these community gardens. We help to create these green spaces and model these good behaviors and show that we don't need to rely on these systems of government that are broken, so that we can then restructure these systems into the way that we know, as Black women especially, that this world can work, because we have been thriving for so long. We have solutions. We've lived with unclean water for years. So clearly, we know how to find clean water somewhere, because water is life. What are those solutions that we can bring to the table?
Thank you so much, Rashida. Like, your vulnerability is so incredibly welcoming into the space, and you're speaking such truth to power. I want to encourage everyone, again, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat, put them in the Q&A. We're welcoming all questions, and we're just encouraging you all. This is supposed to be a discussion in community with you all. So yes, please give us all of your questions. Thank you so much for that response. We kind of were alluding to this, talking about it, in between the lines, but we know that there's growing repression, right? Not just of direct action, but even of just naming things. You can't say DEI anymore, let alone actually have actions that are coming against it. So how are you all seeing this showing up in your work, in your day-to-day, in your communities, etc.?
Denise, I'll say specifically, I work across the state of Indiana. So I work with multiple communities, and what is showing up for us right now is everything from the political repression, social control, economic constraints, impacts on civil society, and all of the what's happening globally. And this showing up is making it us more cognizant of our environment. Things like yesterday in Indianapolis, we had Nazi supporters marching in our streets. Our Indiana federal delegation, congressional leaders decided to vote for redistricting. So we're having the redistricting debate in our state. We have basically two seats that they want to try to obtain, and it'll make our state a super majority. We have issues such as our property tax have been reduced, which seems like it might be a good thing, but what is happening is it's being reduced. That reduces the revenue to our public schools, and they will have less revenue to educate our children. And then on top of that, they're having to share that revenue with charter schools and private schools. And so there'll be less revenue to assist our children. We have the reproductive rights issues here, where women have to go across the border in order to get reproductive health. And we have some things, inklings around our city not knowing what to do with our juveniles. And so they're looking at whether or not the governor wants to come in and help the city of Indianapolis and control it with its, juvenile crime. And we have a ICE detention center that's being built on Camp Atterbury, which I happen to be a veteran, and went there and practiced. Well, now that, and it's also a camp where Job Corps was located. And Job Corps, as you may know, is losing revenue for its program, and it's going to place an ICE detention. So obviously, all of these things, in my view, are exacerbating our condition, making us more vulnerable in a litany of ways, which also, if we're talking about energy and climate, it's going to make us have to really come up with, those super diligent solutionary practices around how we are going to be resilient, I think we need to build more trust, more collectivity, in the deepening of our relationships so that we'll be able to continue to rise. We're a people that are resilient. We have practices from the past that have sustained us. And so I believe we'll make it through now. But what those are exactly, I think we have to have a lot of intentionality on working on those.
Thank you. Does anybody else wanted to chime in on that?
Yeah, I can chime in on speak to that regarding this growing repression. It's definitely made things more difficult. There's so much pushback, even more so than before, surrounding just like energy justice, energy democracy, and the use of solar. So here in Michigan, actually, there's being a bill proposed called a MAGA solar bill, which sounds just about as bad as you think it does. And it's putting a cap of 20% on solar. So just like restricting our ability to have solar and utilize solar, which is just deeply concerning. And then additionally, with the EPA rolling back on the Solar for All funding, that's definitely affecting us here in Michigan and at Solidarity, because we were planning to use that funding and kind of couple it with a current program that we have called Whole Homes, Whole Communities. And that program came out of some legal intervention work that we do, where we intervene when these giant investor-owned utility companies, specifically DTE, continuously ask for rate hikes. And in our previous case, in I want to say 2023, we were able to reach a settlement and get $8 million from DTE, and that money is being funneled into the community. But $8 million, while it sounds like a lot of money, can only go so far when these issues are so extreme. And we're trying to support people with electrification and weatherization of their homes, and that adds up pretty quickly. And so we were hoping to kind of use some of that Solar for All funding to kind of complement and supplement that work. And so it's definitely frustrating to see this happen, but definitely not surprising. So we're thinking of ways that we can be creative and really push back on what's happening. So yeah, there's definitely repression, but that's where we're at.
Which ushers us into the next question, which is about that pushback. So we know this repression is happening. We know it's showing up in our work. What do we think we need to be doing realistically, tangibly, in our day-to-day, in our communities, in our organizations, to push back on the attacks that are being made at every single level, and to keep advancing a regenerative economy, particularly in the context of energy justice?
Yeah, I can start by saying using our platforms. So follow me on Instagram, Energy Queen 19, where I like to post on my story. If it's not my voice, it's me reposting content from the Chisholm Legacy Project, also We Act for Environmental Justice, other groups that are promoting kind of stories about Black liberation and climate justice. I definitely would repost things like that. But also I take things in my own hands, where I'm also raising awareness and building community through education of like simple topics. For example, I've done this series called the ABCs of Energy, where I break down every single letter, talking about its connection to the energy industry with a low-key lens on environmental justice. And I say low-key because it's not overt, but it's like it's slipped in there. So that's one way that I'm definitely leveraging my platform. And I wanted to speak quickly on DC. I know there's a lot in the news about its federal takeover. And what I want to highlight is the fact that, yes, the attempt to take over our city may seem very like mainstream, but on the ground, it is affecting us like more intimately. Like my mom has been stopped by police. I have really close friends that have been stopped by police, but we're not gonna let this fear take our city over. We have really strong leadership. We're led by mostly Black and brown people in DC, and even down to our utility regulators, the Public Service Commission. I just want to highlight the fact that they are doing great work to protect our rates and to make sure that we have access to clean energy. And I can imagine that there are other large cities, especially those led by Black and brown people, that have different initiatives where you can buy your power and it be clean. And I know in DC, we have programs that exist like that. So I do want to highlight some of the good that our city is doing to be able to promote green energy and ensure that everyone has access to it as well.
Thank you so much for that, Nia. I'm interested to hear from the other panelists as well about how we can be showing up and fighting back and what we should be doing.
Yeah, I want to say that, repression, oppression, suppression, none of these things are new. These are not new themes for us, especially as Black women, as Black people. These things are not new to us. But every time we've faced major obstacles, we've come out on top. Every crisis that, the world as we know it has faced, we have been led out of that crises by minorities, by people of color, by women, and so we will continue to do that. And the way that we continue to do that is by taking care of each other. That's the only way. We didn't start this movement. Even again, thinking about some of those Southern themes, some of those spiritual or religious themes. If you are a Christian and you read the Bible and you follow Jesus Christ, and you know that before Jesus taught anything, he made sure that the people were fed. He made sure that they had the things that they needed. If you follow or you've read or studied about the Black Panthers, you know that they provided food and groceries to the community while protecting and saving the community. That's what we have to do. We have to ensure that people have their basic needs met first. Because if you think about yourself as a little kid in preschool and elementary, and you're sitting in that classroom and your teacher's at the front and she's writing on that chalkboard and she's just writing her heart out because she's worked on her lesson plans all weekend and she's trying to teach you something. But if you're sitting in that seat and you're hungry, or you're sitting in that seat and you came from a home with the lights off, or you're sitting in that seat and you did not see your mom before you got to school that morning, you cannot focus on anything that teacher is saying. That teacher can be the best teacher in the world. She can be working with you one-on-one. You can be the only student in there. But if you have other things that are internally going on with you, you cannot absorb that information. It's the same thing with our communities. We can't fault our community members for not going out to vote. We are our own worst enemies. We get on these platforms and we say, well, y'all didn't vote. That's who y'all voted for. This who you wanted. But what did we do to ensure that that person's needs were met before we went and started knocking on the door 2 weeks before the campaign to try to get them to vote? We have to do better in our communities because we are facing these things, so we know firsthand what people are going through. And we have to stop being afraid to put our feelings and what we're going through on the front lines, because a lot of times we try to suppress it. We try to pretend we're good, but dig deep inside and look at the things you're dealing with and see that in the person that you're talking to, because they're probably dealing with the same thing. They may be dealing with worse things. You have some, people are out there just trying to survive. And we have to be more caring and compassionate and figure out how we can meet people where they are to get them where they need to be, or where they can go, or where they want to go. Sometimes we're trying to get people to places they don't want to go. I had to realize in my own community, who all doesn't want these industries here? Am I fighting against pollution, but y'all want it to be here? Let me know. Because if you want this to be here, I can go somewhere else. But if this is what we collectively want, then what can we do to work together to get it out of here? And what is it that we want to replace it? A lot of times people are fighting against something, but they don't even know what they want in the place of it. How are we educating people? How are we showing up for people? So that is one of that's the strategies that I use with my organization. And for anybody who's listening today, just to answer that last part of the question, the most meaningful way that you can support me, my organization, is by actively engaging in your own community. Because again, we can't play whack-a-mole. If I send the industry, the petrochemical, the LNG facility out of my community, and you're not working in yours, it's gonna knock at your door. It's gonna come knocking at your door. So the way that we work, the way that you can support me is doing the work in your community as well, so that we can work together, because we know that these issues are not just one-offs. They're not just impacting me. They're not just impacting my children. They're impacting Donald Trump and his children. He doesn't realize he's breathing in the bad air. He's drinking the dirty water, because you can't separate air and water. So if we don't clean up the air and water, we're all impacted by it. If you don't clean up, all of the other injustices, it ends up trickling over to those other communities, to other people. So we have to work together. And whether it's, amplifying the voices of low income, marginalized, Black and brown women, indigenous, whether it's participating in local initiatives, showing up to community meetings, hosting a back to school drive, hosting a food drive, or whether it's just simply educating yourself so that you're more knowledgeable, so that you can speak to these issues. Everybody can do something. Everybody can contribute something. But I do want to say that whatever it is that you do, ensure that it brings you joy, ensure that it brings you peace, because this work does not stop. There are very few wins. We have to learn how to celebrate the wins that we do get, because they're quickly snatched away from us. There are very few wins. You have to be ready and willing to do this type of work, and understand that people don't want to pay you. They don't think you should get paid. They don't think this should be considered a job. So know that you're showing up not only for your community, but for yourself, for future generations, and for this world as a whole, and be ready for everything that comes with that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And that was a lot. I want to quickly go to the audience Q&A before I give everybody a chance to do their reflections and give us kind of lasting things to think about. I see Nia, thank you for responding to the question. The question in chat for everyone who can't see is, what has been found to be the reason that Black girls today are underperforming in STEM? And so Nia has given that answer to that. And has put that one of the reasons is connected to educator bias and the adultification of Black girls, which is real. And then I also have another question here. Do we not say DEI? Do we let them take our language, word shape ideology? I want to pit that to Denise really quick to see if what your thoughts are about that. Again, it's, do we not say DEI? Do we let them take our language, word shape ideology?
Now, that's a difficult question for me. But first, I'll probably ask the question if DEI really was our words to begin with.
Mm,
Um, so, from my perspective, and then I think that we can always be creative with whatever kind of verbiage. I think it depends on whether or not it delivers, freedom and access, whether or not it's those words are important or not. I've had to, I guess I didn't mention that we had been a subrecipient for 29 million for the Solar for All, and so with that, all of the language has been mentioned by Jackie in Great Reporting was stripped, and so that was kind of one of the questions: do I live in my principle or live in a censored, type of world and environment? But I felt an onus to try to deliver the resources to transform communities. So we just changed the language and just kept it moving. But I can't say whether that's right or wrong, whether, you personally or your collective can live with that or not. Um, but I think that DEI wasn't originally our language anyway. I think we would have had some other kind of verbiage, far more creative and innovative. Can't think of what it would be right now, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been diversity, equity, and inclusion. So
Yeah. Was it our words to begin with? I'm gonna
I
sit
do
with
want
that
to
one.
add to that, Cheryl, if you don't
Mhm.
mind. Not that I could do any justice to that answer, but I do want us to think deeper. They've always tried to stigmatize our language, our culture, the things that we do, from the way that we wear our hair, the rap songs that, our music, our dances, they stigmatize it and then they take it. So, I think about even when the rappers were like, we're going to take these words back and we're going to give power to these words. I think about, things like, the way that they stigmatize like being a single mom, or they stigmatize like child support or black on black crime. But then when you look at the statistics and you educate yourself and you look at where did these terms come from in the first place, who gave us these terms and why are we using them? I see somebody put misappropriation in the chat. Exactly. So we have to take that power back, educate ourselves and educate our community. What words, what language, what do we want to use to identify ourselves? How do we want to, thinking about what Denise just said, what words will we have come up with if this was truly our language? We didn't come up with that. They did. They want to call us a DEI hire. They want to get, and then they want to take it back as if they're taking something from us. It was never ours because that's not how we're identified. We went to school, we did the work, we earned the job. Nothing was ever given to us in the first place. So how do we want to identify ourselves?
Thank you. Thank you for that. There's a lot to chew on within that. I want to give everyone the opportunity to leave the participants with some lasting words, some lasting thoughts. For those listening today, what is the most meaningful way they can support you in your work? And each panelist, I want to give you guys the opportunity to answer that in 2 minutes or less if you are able. Oh, I think somebody has their hand raised, or did I not answer all the questions? No, I think we answered all the questions. Okay, but yeah, I want to give everybody the opportunity to yeah, leave us with some lasting words and what the most meaningful way is that we can support you and your work. Whoever wants to kick it off.
I can start. So one thing that the Energy Queen loves is doing community outreach and community engagement. And so I saw some folks in the chat, and even you, Cheryl, you all are based in Atlanta. And on September 20th, I am hosting an event called Curbing Climate Anxiety, which was funded by the Atlanta Youth Climate Action Fund. So I'm working alongside a group of Atlanta youth, both at the college level and at the high school and middle school level. And it's a STEAM expo where it's kind of going to be two parts. The first part is workshops that are going to help people how to have sustainable lifestyle skills. And then the second part is going to be an expo where youth are going to present different topics about transportation and energy and water and waste and how that they're leveraging those sustainability topics in their day-to-day lives. So I sent a link in the chat about I think I sent it to the host and panelists, but I think someone's going to help me make sure that that link gets to the general chat. So if you're in Atlanta or if you're in the area, we would love to have you come and support. That's in Atlanta. But another thing I wanted to mention is that I am planning to attend the Renewable Energy RE Plus conference, which is happening in Las Vegas this year. I was fully sponsored by one of the conference attendees, SEPA, to attend, and I'll also be speaking. So please come to my session. It's called Going Green with the Energy Queen, where we'll be doing an activity out of my very own renewable energy sustainability activity book. which you can also purchase online. It's an ebook version on my website, Energy Queen 19. And those are all of my handles, Energy Queen 19 for Gmail, energyqueen19.com, Energy Queen 19 on Instagram. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Denise, again, I will just say that one, it's been a joy to be in this space with the Energy Queen, Monica, Rashida, and with you, Cheryl, and Jackie. And I think this is part of, I love what the Chisholm Legacy Project is doing, becoming connected, and knowing each other. And so I think, maybe the more we all intentionally build relationships and know who we are out there, then the stronger we'll be. So I think that goes into, I guess the two takeaways for me is sort of that building of trust and the deepening practice of collectivism. And so takeaway might be, what can all of us that are on here now do together next? And also, I think the creating of knowledge, like Jackie has done, is so important. And so, what kind of knowledge can each of us birth and be able to share with each other so that, we can all benefit from it and utilize it? As far as, so if you do that, you're supporting me. So, taking a play from Rashetta there. And then I'll just say that, yeah, when in Indiana, stop by, contact Black Sunlight Sustainability. We're on Instagram and Thread and Facebook. And we're going to be having some kind of a mocha and coffee and a whole clean energy week coming up. So feel free to join us in any of the things that we're doing to share and educate and advocate within our communities, which our community to me is not even limited geographically. So there are no borders in community. I probably learned that from Jackie. She's my mentor. She doesn't know it. She probably doesn't claim it, but she is. And so no borders, just all of us coming together as humans and, yeah, solving and imagining what we rightfully should have. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very inspiring, as always. I think, has Monica spoken about this question? Okay, good. Thank you.
No, not yet. Thank you. I also just want to thank everyone on the panel as well. It was lovely being on this panel with you all. Amazing insights. Agree to so much of what was uplifted. But to support Solidarity, you can become a member. So we do have a dues paying member structure. It's $10 for the year for Highland Parkers. But if you're not based in Highland Park, it's $25. And then we also do have organizational membership. So if your organization wants to support our organization, you can do that as well. I don't know the amount for organizational memberships off the top of my head. I think it might be like 125 or something, but you can check out our website, Solidarity, SOULDARDARITY.org, for all of the information on that. And then, of course, you can become a sustaining donor. You can donate your time and volunteer. Please shout us out on social media. We have Facebook, we have YouTube, we have Instagram, all of that good jazz. And then, like I said earlier, we are trying to work to push back on this retraction of the Solar for All funding. So we'll be working on a, I guess, op-ed of sorts that we'll be sharing more publicly, so folks can follow our website, our social when that comes out, and give lots of support for that. That would be great. We're trying to push back and really secure that funding so that way it goes to folks that it's supposed to go to. And then the last thing that I'll add is just for folks, a kind of call in for folks who are not Black women to learn from Black women, to listen to Black women, to do the work to unlearn misogynoir. If you don't know what that is, Google. And to respect Black women and to pay us accordingly. But you all showing up here today shows that you are in the steps and in the works to really truly intentionally support Black women leadership. So thanks everyone for attending. And I'll drop all the links into the chat so y'all have it.
Think I already mentioned the ways that you all can support me by supporting each other, celebrating those small wins, always finding some joy. Remember that we're fighting for something and not just against anything. We're fighting for our lives, for our community, for our culture, for our family, for clean air, for clean water, for this world, and start framing it in those positive tones. So, because people think that if you're an activist or whoever, that you're always against everything, but that's not true. We're standing for something, and that's why we're fighting so hard. You can follow me on all the social medias. I am truly the only Royshetta in the world. I'm very easy to find. You don't even have to type my last name. If you just type Royshetta, it's gonna be me, whether it's a bathroom stall or the front page of the paper. It's me. I did it. And also by supporting my organization with resources and funding. If you have access, if you know someone, don't hold it close to your chest, because every penny that comes to Vessel Project of Louisiana goes back out to our community by way of direct cash assistance or food, bill assistance, whatever our community needs. And then we host our monthly community meetings and town hall meetings. And we are in the process of trying to develop a community resilience hub that will be completely ran by renewable energy. So if you have any insights, resources, guidance, please reach out to me. And again, you can find me everywhere. Just type in Royshetta. So thank you all again for having us today.
Thank you so much, Royshetta, Nia, Denise, Monica. You guys are all incredible, and are just such a beautiful representation of everything that's going right. And we're just so grateful to be in community with you all, for you all to share your expertise with us today. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us, a participant who was a part of, and who were very active in the conversation. Again, like we would be talking to ourselves if y'all weren't here. So we're so grateful to you all. Just a couple of things of what you can expect. And wrapping up, we will be sending out the recording. I know some people were asking about that, the slides, the panelist links with short bios, and a collection of energy justice resources that should be landing in your inboxes by Thursday morning. Fingers crossed. And so you guys should be looking for that. We also have a newsletter, TCLP does. Make sure that you sign up for that to be a part of things that we have going on and moving forward. We have a climate gentrification panel coming up next Wednesday. Next month, we're launching our gender justice caucus, as well as putting out our draft policy platform for our global initiative that we're working on. So a lot of things coming out from TCLP. We want you guys to stay in community with us. We want to continue to work with you all. So just make sure that you stay up to date with that. This has been such a pleasure, such an honor, again, to be here to learn from and listen to you all. And we're just so incredibly thankful and grateful. And I hope that everybody has an amazing rest of your Tuesday. Be safe. Thank you all. Again, the recordings will be coming your way. Read Burdens and Blessings. It's an incredible piece of work, an incredible report that has a lot of really important information. And we just thank you guys. Have a beautiful rest of your day, y'all. I think we have some music. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just sing. I'm just kidding. Thanks, guys.